Hello everyone, this is Sarfraz, your English teacher. As you know, examination is very near and we have to revise each and every lesson thoroughly. Uh, I always recommend and appreciate that you must read the original text once or twice before your final exam, because that is very important part for your preparation. Okay, don't believe in summary or quick summary from the YouTube. There are many videos you can find on YouTube that is summary. So please don't go with summary, just read the original text once and try to understand, take your own opinion, your own perspective, and then you must try writing questions from the previous year. You must practice for writing because this is an exam, very lengthy paper will be there, so you must think about the time management in the examination hall. And before that, it is better to write one or two questions every day from English paper, from English literature. Take any lesson and write 2 or 3 answers, long answers, not the smaller. Okay, now we should start the another lesson, that is the enemy. Very important lesson and very interesting also. Just see, written by Paul S. Buck. Before you read, it is the time of the World War. An American prisoner of war was ashore in a dying state of is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over the army as a patriot? So this is something which motivates, which inspires us to read the further, to read the story, and you have to find out the answer. This is the question, that should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? So there is a dilemma in the doctor's life. Should he help the patient or should he help the government? Now the original text starts. Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot of the Japanese coast where as a little boy he had often played. Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot, a place of the Japanese coast, Sahili Elake, and where as a little boy he had often played. So where his boyhood or childhood has been spent. The low square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. So there were narrow beach, there was a narrow beach and that was outlined, that was surrounded by many bent pines, trees. Okay. As a boy, Sadao has climbed where? Sadao had climbed the pines, supporting himself on his bare feet, as he had seen men do in the South Seas when they climbed for coconuts. His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had he failed to say to the little brave boy at his side, "Those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan." So here you can see that a father is motivating his own son. He is telling his own son, a little brave boy. And what he says that yes, those islands yonder is showing the indicating, something that you indicates that is very far from you where you are standing right now. So those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan. So those islands are the stepping stones. Okay, those islands are the stepping stones to the future for Japan. Where shall we step from them? So what is beyond them? This is the question asked by the child, by the little Sadao. Okay, had asked seriously. Who knows? His father had answered. His father said, who knows? No one knows what is beyond that island. Okay. Who can limit our future? Who is there in this world who can limit our future? We are having limitless desires, we are having limitless goals. So there is no, our goals are infinity, our desires are infinity. So who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it. So it depends, totally depends, wholly depends on what we make it. If we have made up our mind that yes, this is my future or this is my goal, so who is there who can limit our future? So you can see here, Dr. Sadao's father is motivating or inspiring or just you can say enlightening the heart of his own son that yes, we must have a goal, we must have a dream, we must have a thinking for making our future better. Okay. So one page is completed. Now next page. Dr. Sadao had taken this into his mind as he did everything his father said. So he was very obedient. Sadao was very obedient. What his father says, he always does the same. Okay. His father, who never joked or played with him, never joked, okay, or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him, who was who was his only son. So he was an eklauta beta, okay, that was only son, and Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. So here you can see the father is too serious, that he is not having or spending time as a joke or just having play or game. Okay, he is totally thinking, he always thinks about about his father, about his son's education. Okay, so that was the chief concern of his father. His education was his father's chief concern. Okay, for this reason he had been sent at 22 to America to learn all that he could be learned of surgery and medicine. He had come back at 30, and before his father died, he had seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist, because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. He had not been sent abroad with the troops. Also, he knew there was some there was some slight danger that the old general might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for this possibility Sadao was being kept in Japan. So in this paragraph we came to know about the life, what happens after the childhood. When Dr. Sadao completed his 20, he went to America, and over there he studied, he did his research work, and after 10 years he came back, and he was thinking that before his father's death, he must be famous as a surgeon, not only as a surgeon but was a scientist, as a scientist. And what was the discovery? The discovery was that a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. So that was the discovery, that yes, there would be no scars if there is a wound, and that wound is treated well and that wound is gone, but even after that the scars are there. But that was a research that by some activity or by some treatment, that scars could be removed forever and ever. There would be no any sign of that scar. So he had not seen abroad with the troops. Why he was not shown? Because general, the old general might need an operation. So there was general was so he was also a patient. Okay, and that was a very critical and very serious disease. Has kept or has been there. Okay, with old general, and for general only, he was not sent to abroad for the war, and he was treated. The general was treated by Dr. Sadao, and for this possibility, Sadao was being kept in Japan. That's why Sadao didn't go to war, okay, and didn't go with the troops. So this is the thing which is written in this paragraph. Now, next paragraph. Now, clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of the past few days had at night drawn heavy fog from the cold waves. Sadao watched mists hide outlines of a little island near the shore and then come creeping up. The beach below the house, wreathing around the pines in a few minutes, fog would be wrapped about the house too. Then he would go into the room where Hannah, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. So, in this paragraph, we came to know about his life, after the marriage, what kind of life he was living, Dr. Sadao's life. Okay. So, clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of the past few days at night drawn heavy fog from the cold wave. So, that night was a foggy night. So, the watched mists hide outlines of a little island near the shore and then come creeping up the beach below the house. So, there was something, that black thing was coming towards his house and wreathing around the pines. In a few minutes, fog would be wrapped about the house too. So that fog, the house was wrapped by the fog, and then he would go into the room where Hannah, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. So there were two children, and here in this paragraph we came to know about his wife. His wife's name was Hannah, and they were having two children also. Now let's see next paragraph. But at this moment the door opened and she looked out, a dark blue woolen houri over her kimono. She came to him affectionately and put her arm through his as he stood, smiled and said nothing. So, but at this moment the door opened. दरवाजा खुलता है and she looked out, a dark blue woolen houri. Houri, you can see here it is written what is houri. Hauri, a loose outer garment worn over his kimono. Kimono, it's like a cloth in Japan. It's an special shirt or it's a special kameez, you can say. She came to him affectionately. She came to him affectionately and put her arm through his as he stood. उसको अपने बाहों में ले लेती है, So she came to him affectionately and put her arm through his as he stood, smiled and said nothing. He had met Hannah in America. Now from here, we came to know about the love affair between them. He had met Hannah in America, but he had waited for fall in love with her until he was sure that she was Japanese. So he confirmed first that whether she is Japanese or not. His father would never have received her unless she had been pure in her race. Okay, so he wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah. He wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah. He wondered, वो हमेशा हैरान रहता था, सोचता था कि अगर हना नहीं मिलती तो फिर वो किससे शादी करता. And by what luck he had found her in the most casual way, by chance, literally. So their meeting was by chance, okay, at an American professor's house. Where they met? They met at an American professor's house. The professor and his wife had been kind people, anxious to do something for their few foreign students. So American professors was very kind, both, not only American professors, also his wife, and they were very anxious. They were very anxious to do something for their few foreign students, and the students, though bored, had accepted his kindness. Sadao had often told Hannah how nearly he had not gone to Professor Harley's house that night. Sadao had often told, हमेशा कहा करता है सदाव, अगर उस दिन प्रोफेसर हार्ली के घर पे नहीं जाता देन हना को वो कभी नहीं मिलता. So now here you can say that there is a talking between them, that how they were fall in love and they started loving each other, and they were just talking about that is their good luck, that they met each other and they decided to get married, and now they are having two children also. Next, the rooms. Okay, Sadao had often told Hannah how nearly he had not gone to Professor Harley's house. So the name of professor was Harley's house. That night, the rooms were so small, the food so bad. The room was small and food was bad. The professor's wife so voluble. So voluble means so verbal, so loquacious. Loquacious means a person who is talks a lot, talkative you can say. But he had gone and there he had found Hannah, a new student, and had felt he would love her if it were at all possible. So where he made he found Hannah, a new student, and had felt that he would love her if it were all possible. Now he felt her hand on his arm and was aware of the pleasure it gave him, even though they had been married years enough to have the two children. He felt her hand on his arm. वो महसूस करता है, ठीक है, हर हैंड उसके हाथों को जो उसके बाजू से चिपके हुए हैं, and was aware of the pleasure it gave him. Okay, even though they had been married years enough to have the children, काफ़ी दिन हो गए शादी के, बट उनका प्यार अभी भी बना हुआ है. For they had not married heedlessly in America, क्योंकि उन्होंने शादी heedlessly carelessly नहीं किया था, बल्कि सोच समझ के किया था. They had finished their work at school and had come home to Japan. पहले उन्होंने पढ़ाई कंप्लीट किया था. And when his father had seen her, the marriage had been arranged in old Japanese way, although Sadao and Hannah had talked everything beforehand. हर बात हर तरह मतलब हर किस्म की बातें हो चुकी थी. That what would happen, how that marriage would be how that marriage would be arranged. Okay, so that marriage was totally localized, you can say, the according to Japanese norms and cultures. Okay, and they were perfectly happy. She laid her cheek against his arm, so she laid her cheeks against his arm. It was at this moment that both of them saw something black come out of the mist, and it was a man. तभी अभी ये इनका अभी रोमांस चल ही रहा था, तब तक एक मतलब आ जाता है एक पर्सन जो मिस्ट से हो के निकलता है. ऐसा लगता है कि कोई काला चीज़ आ रहा है उनके सामने. इट वॉज एट दिस मोमेंट दैट both of them saw something black come out of the mist, and it was a man. He was flung up out of the ocean, flung it seemed to his feet by a breaker, and he staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist, against the mist, and his arms above his head. Then he curled mist hid him again. His arms, then his arms above his head, then curled mist hid him again. So what is there? There is a man who is a prisoner and who is coming out of the mist. That night is very foggy, and he was flung up out of the ocean, and it seemed, okay, it seemed to his feet by a breaker. He staggered. So he staggered means he is not walking easily, and his body outlined against the mist. Then the curled mist hid him again. Who's that? Hannah cried. Hannah cried. She dropped Sadao's arm, and they both leaned over the railing of the veranda. उन्होंने झुक कर देखा रेलिंग पे झुक कर. And now they saw him again. The man was on his hands and knees crawling. गिर गया था और he was crawling. He was creeping, you can say. So you can see there is an image. The man was on his hands and knees crawling. Then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. चेहरे के बल, मुंह के बल गिरा हुआ था. A fisherman perhaps. Sadao, he was a doctor, and what he says that a fisherman perhaps, शायद कोई मछुआरा है, and washed from his boat, and he ran quickly down the steps, and behind him what he found. जाता है, देखता है उसको पीछे से. Hannah came, her wide sleeves flying. हवाएं चल रही हैं जिसकी वजह से उसकी जो sleeves है, it is flying. A mile or two away on either side there were fishing villages, but here was only the bare and lonely coast, dangerous with rocks. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. Somehow the man had managed to come through them. He must be badly torn. He must be badly torn, he said. A mile or two away, on either side there were fishing villages. 1 या 2 मील की दूरी तक काफ़ी मछुआरों के गांव था. And but here was only the bare and lonely coast. Okay, lonely coast was there, dangerous with rocks. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. खतरनाक तरह के चट्टान थे वहाँ पे, कांटी की तरह. ठीक है ना. Somehow the man had managed to come through them. किसी तरह वो उस rocks को पार करके आया हुआ है. And he must be badly torn. And it seems that he is too tired. Is too torn. Okay. They saw when they came toward him that indeed it was so. The sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. They saw, उन्होंने देखा, when they came toward him, जब वो उनकी तरफ गए, and that indeed it was the sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. एक तरफ खून जो था, जो वहाँ का जो सैंड था, जिस तरफ वो गिरा हुआ था, जिस बल गिरा हुआ था, वहाँ का जो सैंड था वो लाल खून को क्या हुआ था, soaked. He is wounded, Sadao exclaimed. Sadao says, what he says that he is wounded. He made haste to the man who lay motionless, his face in the sand, an old cap stuck to his head, soaked with sea water. He was in wet rags of garments. Sadao stopped Hannah at his side and turned the man's head. They saw the face. So they understood that he is wounded, he is motionless, his face is in the sand, and his rags of garments is wet. And Sadao says that Hannah at his side, turned the man's head, and they saw the face. A white man, Hannah whispered. Hannah ने चिल्लाया, जोर से नहीं, मतलब आहिस्ते से whispered. ठीक है. A white man. Yes, it was a white man. The wet cape fell away, and there was his wet yellow hair, long, as though for many weeks it had not been cut, and upon his young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. He was unconscious and knew nothing that they did for him. So it seems that he is an Englishman. Okay. The wet cap fell away. He is having yellow hair. His young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. Yellow beard is also there. And he was unconscious and knowing nothing that they did for him. So he is unconscious totally. Now Sadao remembered the wound. With his expert fingers he began to search for it. Blood flowed freshly at his touch on the right side of his lower back. So we can memorize the point here. On the right side of his lower back, Sadao saw that a gun wound had been reopened. The flesh was blackened with powder. Sometime, not many days ago, the man had been shot and had not been tended. The man had been shot and had not been tended, and it was bad chance that the rock had struck the wound. It was bad chance that the rock had struck the wound. रॉक की वजह से, चट्टानों की वजह से वो जो wound था और भी ज़्यादा मतलब तकलीफ देने वाला हो गया है. वो wound और ज़्यादा बढ़ गया है. ठीक है ना, खून और ज़्यादा बह गया है उसकी वजह से. Now see, oh how he is bleeding, Hannah whispered. Again in a solemn voice, the mist screened them now completely, and at this time of day no one came by. The fishermen had gone home, and even the chance beachcombers would have considered the day at an end. How he is bleeding, Hannah whispered. Again in a solemn voice. Solemn voice means very serious voice. The mist screened them now completely, and at this time of day no one came by. The fishermen had gone home, and even the chance beachcombers would have considered the day at an end. What shall we do with this man? Sadao muttered. But his trained hands seemed of their own will to be doing what they could to stanch the fearful bleeding. To stanch the fearful bleeding, to stop the fearful bleeding. Okay, and he pegged, what he pegged? He pegged the wound with the sea moss that strewed the beach. That strewed the beach. The man moaned with pain in his stupor, in his unconsciousness, but he did not awaken. Stupor, unconsciousness, the condition of unconsciousness. The best thing that we could do would be to put him back in the sea. Sadao said, answering himself. Now that the bleeding was stopped for the moment, and he stood up and dusted the sand from his hands. Now you can see the bleeding was stopped for the moment, and he stood up and dusted the sand from his hands. Yes, undoubtedly that would be best, Hannah said steadily, very fastly. And but she continued what? But she continued to stare down at the motionless man. And if we shelter a white man in our house, we should be arrested, and if we turned him over as a prisoner, he would certainly die. If we shelter a white man in our house, we should be arrested. So here there was a case that, if any Japanese man or a person, if a Japanese would shelter any foreigner, any Englishman, okay, he would be arrested and executed also. He would certainly die, Sadao said. The kindest thing would be to put him back into the sea, Hannah said. But neither of them moved. They were staring with a curious repulsion upon the inert figure. What is he? Hannah whispered. What is he? There is something about him that looks American. So he looks American. Okay. Sadao said, so there is something about him that looks American. He took up the battered cap. Yes, there almost gone was the faint lettering. Okay, that was faint lettering. Yes, there almost gone was the faint lettering. A sailor, he said, from an American warship. He spelled it out. U.S. Navy. The man was a prisoner of war. He has escaped, Hannah cried softly, and that is why he is wounded. He is wounded. In the back, you can see in the back, Sadao agreed. They hesitated, looking at each other. Then Hannah said with resolution, with full determination, that yes, if possible, come. Are we able to put him back into the sea? If I am able, are you? Sadao asked. Yes, I am able. I can do that. Are you able to do the same? No, Hannah said, but if you can do it alone. Hannah said that you must do it alone. Sadao hesitated again. The strange thing is, he said, that if the man were whole, I could turn him over to the police without difficulty. I care nothing for him. He is my enemy. All Americans are my enemy, and he is only a common fellow. You see how foolish his face is. But since he is wounded, you also cannot throw him back to the sea, Hannah said. Then there is only one thing to do. We must carry him into the house. So they decided to carry him in their house and to treat him. Okay. But the servant Sadao inquired that what would happen if the servants would see him, and they might inform the police, and we might be arrested, and we might be executed. What would happen with our children's future? So this was something that was like a worry for him. So this is the first part.